Music doesn't just live on the charts anymore. It lives in the background of stories, in cutscenes and credits, in trailers and title screens. In the sound chamber realm, we don't separate music from culture. We trace how sound moves through it. And today, two of the biggest vehicles for that movement are film and gaming. This is the story of how visual worlds shape sonic ones, and how what we hear in our favorite movies and games ends up defining what we dance to, cry to, and stream on repeat. Love what you're watching? Scan the QR on the screen for more. The soundtrack isn't just decoration, it's direction. It guides emotion, controls pacing, tells us what to feel before we even see what's happening. But beyond that, it introduces us to soundscapes we might never explore otherwise. A love scene with an indie ballad suddenly sends a song to the top of global charts. A fight sequence scored with Afrobeat exposes millions to a new genre. Film curates music in a deeply emotional context. It embeds it into memory. When you remember the scene, you remember the song. And that connection transforms passive listening into cultural imprint. Now multiply that by scale. Global releases, instant streaming, cross-cultural reach. A Bollywood film breaks into Western charts. A South Korean drama exports R&B-infused OSTs. A Marvel movie features Nigerian Altai artists. Suddenly, the music of the moment isn't coming from radio, it's coming from reels. But it's not just the big movies. Indie films, art house cinema, documentaries, they all function as portals. They use music to build mood, but also to build bridges. Between audiences, between cultures, between past and present. And the ripple effect is real. A song featured in a critically acclaimed film often sees a 200% to 300% increase in streams within a week. Entire Spotify playlists are curated around soundtracks. Directors are now seen as tastemakers. But while film gives us curated emotion, gaming gives us something different: immersion. In gaming, music is not just something you hear, it's something you feel. You live with it, interact with it, loop it for hours, react to it in real time. The music isn't the background, it's the mood engine. From the eerie synths of survival horror to the cinematic orchestras of fantasy RPGs, from the grime-laced drill tracks in urban combat games to ambient lo-fi loops in life simulators, games have become full-on sonic experiences. And unlike films, games are non-linear. That means the music adapts. Dynamic scoring systems allow tracks to evolve based on your choices. Your playstyle shapes the soundtrack. The game becomes a remix, and you're the DJ. That level of interaction builds intimacy. You don't just hear the song, you inhabit it. And that's where something interesting happens. Gamers become music fans. Music fans become gamers. And soundtracks become soundtracks to real life. People stream game scores while studying, work out to boss-level themes, remix cutscene music into lo-fi edits, sample NPC dialogue into drill tracks. The line between in-game and in-ear is gone. Let's talk impact. Take the FIFA series. For years, it's been the unlikely driver of global music discovery. It's introduced artists from Nigeria, Brazil, Sweden, the UK, and more to millions of players who may never set foot in a club or click on a music blog. The same goes for Grand Theft Auto's radio stations, or NBA 2K's curated hip-hop, or Fortnite's virtual concerts featuring real artists. These platforms aren't just gaming experiences. They're launchpads, and artists know it. Being featured in a game now holds as much weight as a late-night TV performance. It's exposure, it's credibility, it's influence. But it's also business. Game companies pay licensing fees. Some develop entire albums in collaboration with artists. Others build soundtracks in-house, employing full-time composers and sound designers. TikTok sounds born in modded games. memes created from voice lines, dance trends tied to character animations. Music, once the score, now the story. And this blending of sound and sight is accelerating. Music videos now borrow from gaming aesthetics. Games feature cinematic storytelling. Artists release interactive music experiences that feel like short games. The metaverse, virtual worlds, hybrid concerts, these aren't just experiments. They're signals. Signals that the way we engage with music is no longer passive. We don't just watch it or hear it, we live it. And in the sound chamber, we listen to how that experience echoes. Because as these mediums merge, the old boundaries fade. Is a film score still a soundtrack? Or is it a genre? Is game music still a background loop? Or a standalone career path? Is the artist performing for the crowd? Or inside the code? These are the new questions. Because music is no longer confined to the stage or the speaker. It's embedded into the engine, coded into the culture, streaming through scenes and systems. What happens when the music doesn't just shape the mood, but starts shaping the world around you? Because when music begins shaping the world around you, it stops being a score and becomes a system, a sonic interface, an invisible layer of design. In the sound chamber, we go beyond the loop. We ask, what happens when the music no longer follows the story, but becomes the story itself? Let's look at the future. Imagine a world where your soundtrack changes as you walk down the street. Your location triggers chords. Your heart rate influences tempo. Your surroundings affect instrumentation. This isn't fantasy. It's ambient computing meeting reactive sound. In gaming, we already have dynamic music that responds to player decisions. But now, this concept is leaking into the real world. Mobile apps can now use GPS, movement, and biometric feedback to generate adaptive playlists. Museums are experimenting with spatial audio tours. Stores are deploying AI music that shifts with foot traffic. This is music as architecture. Sound that doesn't just sit on top of an experience, but becomes part of its structure. And in film, directors are exploring non-linear storytelling with branching soundtracks. You choose a path, the score shifts. You change characters, the tone evolves. No two viewings are exactly the same. The music doesn't just support the narrative, it is the narrative's mood map. This kind of audio immersion rewires our expectations. We stop expecting a single melody to define a moment. We start listening for layers, variations, transitions. The score becomes a living organism, a character of its own. And this isn't limited to fiction. Documentaries now use minimalist scores that evolve subtly based on topic and tone. VR filmmakers are designing 3D sonic fields where sound flows directionally with your gaze. Sound design becomes spatial, psychological, subconscious. Artists are no longer just writers of music. They are composers of emotional infrastructure. Their tools, synths, strings, samples, but also code, motion capture, game engines, haptics, data. We are entering the age of sonic world building. These creators are bridging industries. 1 week scoring a game. The next, directing sound for an immersive installation. The next, collaborating with neuroscientists on therapeutic music environments. Because music is no longer just for listening, it's for living in. And this shifts the economics too. Because now, music is a layer, an asset that spans industries. A single track might live as part of a film, a game, a brand identity, a virtual experience, a wellness app. Each instance generating revenue, each use case building cultural capital. Licensing becomes more complex, more powerful. Artists aren't chasing streams, they're placing songs inside stories. And that creates long-term value. Because a song inside a film scene might live forever. A theme in a game might loop millions of times. A motif in a cinematic universe becomes a global trigger, a Pavlovian cue for fans across generations. Think about Star Wars, the Marvel intro, the opening sting of a Netflix series. Now think smaller, more indie, more granular. A lo-fi track that scores a heartfelt moment in an A24 drama. A drill beat that underlines a plot twist in a Netflix docuseries. A grime anthem that defines a street-level superhero's identity. These placements do more than support, they seed entire movements. Music used to follow culture. Now in film and gaming, it leads it. And this leads us to a deeper truth in the sound chamber. Every sonic moment carries forward more than melody. It carries memory. When you hear that one chord progression, you don't just recall the game. You recall the level, the challenge, the win, the friends you played with. When you hear that cue from a film, you don't just remember the plot. You remember where you were, who you were, what you felt. Music doesn't just score the scene, it seals it. And that's why creators in this new ecosystem are paying attention to more than style. They're focusing on texture, tone, timing. Because the moment someone remembers where they were when the sound hit, that's when the music becomes immortal. Now let's go further. What happens when the user becomes the composer? When a game's music shifts because of your voice? When a film score changes based on your reaction? We're not far. Tech already exists that can use your EEG to adjust music for focus. Tools that analyze voice tone to adjust mood. Game engines that calculate real-time musical layers based on narrative branches. Soon, we won't just consume music. We'll co-compose it through motion, emotion, decision. Sound will be a response, a mirror, a dance partner. Music becomes a conversation. When sound is no longer written, but generated, who holds the pen? Scan the QR on the screen to join the community.